Hey everybody, welcome to Let's Click. And I had to redo my stream, so I learned something new every day about this stupid thing. So I apologize that the link that I sent out failed, but we are here, and I'm going to try to join in on the iPad so I can watch the stream. Hopefully, maybe not. I don't know. I might have to use my laptop for all I know, because I want to be able to get into the chat because we have fun time today. We've got I've got Josh Weinberg here, and he's a photographer who I met late last year in Chicago. And so he's going to be joining me in just a second once I get all my technical nonsense squared away. Let's see what happens here. It just doesn't want my iPad to do that. So I'm going to go over and we're going to do this the old fashioned way with a laptop. So there we go. All right. I am in and I can see that there is a chat. So thanks everyone for joining in today. I really do appreciate that. I'll type something in the chat here. And we'll get it going. So again, apologies for the technical difficulties. Hey, Stuart, yeah, I mean, what are we going to do if we can't join Michael Cohen? What is the world coming to? I won't be having Michael Cohen on this show anytime soon. So anyway, so this is Let's Click. It is my hopefully recurring photography. I could call it a podcast, but it's not a podcast. It's a video show because photography is a visual medium. And while there is still no photography section or whatever heading in Substack, arts and entertainment it is. So or arts, whatever it is, fine arts and something like that. So hey, thanks for being here. It's all good. So I'm going to get Josh on here so that I can shut up about talking to myself, and then hopefully we can share some pictures and talk about some projects that he's been doing recently, and so you can learn about Josh's photography. So welcome, Josh. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, Jason.
Oh man, this is cool. I'm trying all this new technology stuff. What can I do? This is live without a net, but welcome to Let's Click.
Thanks. It's amazing the tools we now have, as well as the tasks we're put to. Right? If we want to do a TV show in the
Absolutely.
old day, we needed all kind of other tools and other people. But
Not to
on the other
mention
hand,
a
they took
space
care of
way
all the
bigger.
details for us.
Yeah, not to mention a really huge space. So it looks like there are people in the chat. That is good. We've got 13 people tuned in after I completely flubbed the stream key from before. So I'm going to make sure I don't do that next time.
And then you should just add me in Substack as the guest for this new stream.
So that's true. Folks. That is true. I'm going to do that. Let's see if I can. I don't know if I can do that. Let's see. There should be a way for me to do that. But I don't know. Let's see. Shoot. I'm going to share the link with you guys, but I'll put it in the chat. So tell you what, can you do me a favor? And if you're in the Substack chat, send everyone a link to your website so they can subscribe to you, because I forgot to add the guest link when I did the emergency chat or the emergency live stream. So just throw that down in there, and everybody can click on that and paste it into their browser to follow Josh. I should be able to. I just don't know what happens if. No, I can't do that from my iPad in the app. There's probably a way to do it. I just don't know what that.
Well, let's go on then.
Yeah. So why we should just continue, right? So here we are. So let's introduce yourself to my listeners and my viewers who are here online today, and tell them a little bit who you are, what you do, and then we'll go on from there.
Okay, and as you know, I can go on for a while, so just kinda signal me when you've had enough there.
Yeah, if I start going like this, we're in trouble.
Yeah. So, I live out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been doing photography since I was 7, about, 50 some odd years. Worked my whole career in corporate communications, and as COVID hit and I needed things to uplift me, I really dove back into photography. Um, and last year, I left corporate communications to kind of dive into photography full time.
Oh,
And my diving into photography really means teaching photography, educating others, building communities. I like my photographs. I think they're good. I'm not sure anyone after me will care about them. But if I can find some people and inspire them to be better photographers or learn how to see the world, um, that will live on after me. So I do a lot of urban abstract photography, as we'll see people. The I started to write on Substack about 2 years ago. Was never really like a writer and a consistent writer before, and I've been impressed myself that I produced 73 um, uh, issues. And really, they're really there for me. They were
mhm,
my way of looking at my photographs after a week of shooting and saying, what did I do? Why is it important? What does it mean to me? And really slowing down to look at them more. So I shoot urban abstract photography. I tried to figure out what do I do a couple years ago, and I came to it as I take pictures of the passed by, the underappreciated, and the not noticed.
awesome.
Right. Our workshop was great, and I loved going out and getting the Chicago theater and the fountain and the cityscape. But really, what was for me was the reflections in the windows and the
Mhm,
patterns and the
mhm.
abstracts and the how do I see the city creatively?
Well, you said something to me, when because I so last year, just a little backstory, I set up a urban landscape photo workshop in Chicago, Illinois, and, without knowing of all the nonsense that would be going on in Chicago later that year, of course. But I thought, Chicago is a wonderful place, and you signed up for that workshop, which was really cool, and I appreciate that because, we had a fun group. We had a small group. There was like what 4 or 5 of us, and we had a really good time. Chicago, at least inside the Loop downtown, is a very walkable area. Um, and so, my intention, and I think what you embraced was this idea of, I think when most people think of going to a city, they think street photography. And I'm not a street photographer at all. And you mentioned that, right?
Yeah.
What was your comment about it? I mean, you said
Well,
something about that you like.
since I was a kid and reading popular photography and Shutterbug, if anyone else is old enough
Mhm.
to remember magazines, there were always ads in there for photography workshops. My dream was to go to one of these 3-day photography workshops, right? And you finally fulfilled it for me. The problem was every single one of those was landscape photography,
Oh,
right?
or
And
street
then
photography or landscape
well,
photography.
so then the other piece was all the photo I'm a city guy. I grew up in New York City, lived in San Francisco, just south of
Mhm.
San Francisco now. And there were lots of urban workshops now, and they're like you said, they're all street photography. The guy Brian Duckett, who's done a bunch of mentorship for me, and I love his videos. And he runs about 50 street workshops a year in Venice. He's in the UK, in
Oh, that's
Blackpool,
awesome.
England.
You're right.
And again, I would go to I think about going to a workshop just to be with him. Taking pictures of people walking on the street, not my thing. So your workshop, when I saw that the first day you promoted it, it hit the perfect sweet spot. It was in a city, and it
Right,
wasn't street photography.
right.
It was,
At least
I think
not in
you
the
called it,
standard sense, right?
right, you called right, and for street photography here, we mean, taking pictures of people doing stuff, right? You called it, like, I think, creative photography in Chicago, right?
An
It
urban
didn't necessarily need to
landscape
be
or something
about
like that. Yeah.
Chicago, right?
Yeah, the idea behind that workshop, and I had done a workshop in Chicago, but it had been almost 10 years, I think, it was like 20. Oh, it was 10 years. I know it was 10 years ag it was, 2015. We went there in the end of August in 2015. I went with another photographer who was my co-leader on that, and, well, not to get political, but that was like 3 weeks after somebody came down the golden staircase. And so there was a serious vibe around the riverfront area down on Lower Wacker Drive, that time. Um, around a building that shall not be named. Um, but anyway, so I remember that that was when it was in time, and we did that, and I just thought this is really great because the idea of going somewhere and embracing it for the city itself. The city is the subject. You know, that to me
Yeah.
was what I was trying to work with, and I and you got some amazing photos. I think everybody on the workshop actually got some really great photos, but it's that niche for if you're a landscape photographer, you know, you get you look out, right, and you see the big scene and once that photo's done, what else
What
do you do?
next?
Right, you
Right,
have
you
to look
choose a
for those
little leaf for the plant, and
right,
not to denigrate landscape photography, right? One of the reasons I don't do landscape photography is, right, mine never come out great. And I had another mentor who said to me, we looked at my whole portfolio and we discussed how do I improve, and he said to me, "Find what you're passionate about and photograph it."
there you go.
And I took a Berkeley extension class here years ago as a weekend, and we spent half of one day talking about what makes a great photography, or what makes a great photograph. And what came out in the end was a great photograph is when the person's love for the subject comes through.
That's
Now,
awesome.
I like the outdoors, right? But I think you're much more of a outdoors person. So when you do landscape photography, it comes out as something. For
Mhm.
me, the urban photography is what shines because that's what I'm passionate about, right?
Well, and you live somewhere that's you have access to that better.
Yes, but I can also show you later on, or with some business parks around here that I take pictures of, right? That also come out. But I think that I'm an urban guy. I was a volunteer walking tour guide for a group here called City Guides that has 70 different free tours of San Francisco and 200 guides, right? So for me, photography is walking around. Um,
Mhm.
and I was just in LA for 2 days, and I walked. I think it was 40,000 steps in 2 days. My normal is about
That's
seven, right?
pretty good, yeah.
And the other quote that I use in the community college class I teach right now is from Dorothea Lange, and she says, "A camera is an instrument that teaches us to see without a camera." Right? When I took my camera out in LA, I started to see things that I would have walked by if I
Mm,
was only on the way to a destination, and it slows you
mhm.
down and it makes you appreciate things. Um,
I agree, and I looked at you sent me some of your photos from LA, and I lived in LA, I went to college there, so I'm not totally familiar with all of the spots downtown because 28, 20, 30 years ago, you didn't go downtown in LA. There was nothing in down I mean, there were it, but it was the financial district, the garment district, whatever, and then the old town LA, City Hall, right?
no,
Lots of trips to Olvera Street when I was little, but now, um, call it revitalized or gentrified or whatever you want to call it, but downtown LA is actually a place now where people are beginning to live and that was never there when I lived. If you lived downtown, it was like kind of shady. It was a little
yeah,
sketchy.
and I think since COVID, it's kind of declined a little bit. But you can see the essence of it. Apple took this incredible theater and redid it like in such incredible detail that's now their Apple store.
Oh
But
wow.
the downtown, it has this core that wants to shine, right? All
Hmm.
these incredible old buildings that have just been not loved, and they're starting to
Right.
be loved again.
Yeah. Well, and where do you park? You know, because
Eh,
driving in LA is a pain in the butt. But you
I
know,
I took public transit.
see, and they have that now too. I mean, these were all things that didn't
Yes.
really exist. And yet, if my grandfather were still here, he could tell you which trolley streetcar line to get on to go to all the various places. Oh, you need to go down, you know, Sepulveda or Wilshire or whatever, right? It was all that stuff. So, you know, I will say that your photos piqued my interest because it makes me want. I mean, unfortunately, my grandparents are no longer around. In fact, my grandmother's 100th birthday is coming up next week on the 16th. Would be her 100th birthday, and she's a big part of why I got into photography, along with my mom. And it would be cool to go and do something like what we did in Chicago in Los Angeles. Now, I just don't know if it would sell because I don't think people think of Los Angeles as being a place to go and, you know, shoot photos, but maybe not right now with all the crazy going on. But you were just there and it seemed like it worked out pretty well for you, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, look, one of the things that sold your Chicago workshop were the photos you sent to Chicago because it gave the idea of what were the opportunities here.
Hmm.
And I think the same thing in LA. And maybe we can co-design one, right?
All right, there you
And
go.
do it together. And clearly, you had gone down to do a scouting trip, so you do a scouting trip of there. And the Olympics are coming there in 2 years.
Hmm.
The transportation infrastructure is almost done. The people mover is almost done. There, you know, part of it is showing people what's available there.
Right.
Right?
Usually the worst thing is you have to stay downtown for the best experience, and it just gets a little spendy. But
Yeah,
it is what it is. But on the other side, if you're not having to rent a car and do the other things, then it's pretty great.
right.
The
Well,
idea of going to LA without a car scares the hell out of me because it's like mandatory in Southern California.
well, it worked out except for the one time I took a Waymo and all these looks from people with driving the self-driving car.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
it's interesting. I have so I'm planning a San Francisco workshop. May
Oh,
happen in April. I may push it off to October. But I've got this opposite problem that if you come to San Francisco to do photography, you come wanting to shoot the Golden Gate Bridge and the
yes.
Bay Bridge and Coit Tower and the cable cars and the ferry building and Fisherman's Wharf,
The checklist.
right? And I will definitely have in my workshop the Golden Gate Bridge and one of those other ones, the landscape from Treasure Island or
Mhm.
Alcatraz. But I want people to come and go away with this idea that of my version of urban photography, that you can come here and start to see the details and little things without only shooting the icons. And it's this
Mhm.
balancing act I have to do of people want to shoot San Francisco, but I want them to shoot beyond the icons.
Right. Yeah, and that's always a challenge. And, having been to San Francisco, getting around there. I mean, there's the public transportation, but when you just checked off all those destinations, one does not simply walk to those destinations. I learned that the hard way on a road trip in college with some friends of mine. We were going up to the Bay Area for a concert. So what do you do during the day? You go. We weren't staying in the city. We took BART into San Francisco, got off wherever it was, somewhere near Chinatown, and then it's like, oh look, Coit Tower is just right there. Well, no, it's not just right there. It is like up a hill, and by the end of that, oh look, Fisherman's Wharf is just over there, and I mean, I had put some mileage on my sneakers that day,
Yes.
and I bought a loaf of Boudin sourdough bread right there on Fisherman's Wharf because honestly, that is the best sourdough bread. End of discussion. Um, it really is. And the idea was that, oh, I'm going to take some sourdough bread back to LA when we're done. No, I ate that whole thing. I was so just, absolutely crazy. Now, the thing about Chicago was a great trip, and we got a lot of cool pictures. That the subject was Chicago, right? It was the intention wasn't here's a person on the street, like street photography tends to be. I would say we did some photographs that were kind of like street photography, but a lot of them were finding close-up details, windows, reflections, whatever.
Right.
So,
I saw Chicago as kind of the structure, right? We went from the fountain to the bean
mhm,
to uh, the
the
architecture
theater,
tour
right.
to the and then in between it, traveling between, or when we were done, that's when I went to go look for all the how do I begin to fill in my view of a
Mhm.
city.
Right. Yeah, very cool. And that's the thing. It's like a workshop, and having been doing stuff like this now for the last, oh gosh, my first workshop was 2007. So I'm coming up on almost 20 years which is a funny thing to say. Um, it's filling in those other things and giving your group the space. The last thing I ever want to do is go on a photo workshop class where the instructor says, "Now put your tripod here and put your camera on f8 and this is the shutter speed and just go." Now, there might be people who like that. I'm not saying that that's not a learning experience into itself, but I like to say that I put us in the places to succeed and then let everybody kind of do their own thing. So I've that's what I found, and I like that with your photos was like the LA ones, just, oh, you just happen to see this, and this is something that you might not have thought about otherwise. Now, when you got back from Chicago, let's we mentioned that we were going to talk about your project. You decided to do a project. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that to really be a successful artist, right? And if people here aren't ready to call themselves an artist, right? Let's call it a successful photographer. You've got to do something with your photography, right? Taking the picture and keeping it in your camera is not good enough. Taking the picture and downloading it and putting it on your computer is not good enough, right?
Mm,
You've got to, whether you build a website that you look at yourself or put it on Instagram or um, find a way to share it or build a Substack and write each week or just post photos, sharing your photography is an incredible boost to it. It forces you to look at it more critically. It makes you think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. It makes you compile your photographs into something. So, you know, going on a 3-day photo workshop is a big effort, right? You're leading photo workshops all year long, but for me to carve the days out of work
mhm, mhm.
and to um, to choose the equipment and to figure out how do you pack that into a carry-on, right? And to book the flight and get there, right? This 3-day workshop is, it's much more than a 3-day effort. So I got back and I said, I took all these photos. I now want to do something with
Mhm.
this, right? So I've been doing Substacks, and I tried my hand at zines. And we can dip into my zine history if you want a little bit. But I came back and said, this is really the opportunity for me to make a real zine. And that's what I did, right? And um, I don't know if everyone on the chat in the stream is familiar with zines, right? But it comes from the word magazine. And these were self produced um, magazines that really started, some people say 50s, 60s, a lot of come out of the punk era. People did them on photocopiers. It was really a do it yourself little photo book. And I'd made a couple of these. And as I'm building up this photo business, which has lots of components, selling zines, leading workshops, doing private one on one lessons, doing day long walks in San Francisco, I'd been watching a lot of people about selling zines. And I said, this is my opportunity to go create, not just create a zine, because I'd done a couple of those and sent them out to artists, but really try to market it. And I learned how to build an Etsy website and how to market this and get all the infrastructure done. And rather than print it on my laser printer, which is a great way to do zines, sent it out to a printer and got home this
Cool.
booklet. Right?
And that's that. See that I had heard of zines, but I was like, "What the heck is this?" Right? Because you see people throwing the terms around, and I'm like, "Man, am I just like too Gen X to not know what's going on and figure out what the lingo is with this stuff?" But they're these little printed booklets, some of which, like you said, sometimes people will just sort of do it as a DIY project, um, and other times you'll send it out. So you took your photos and you sent them out. What was this? Is there a particular service that you used? How did you do that?
Yeah, well, so let's take a step back and go through zines from the beginning, if you want. How's that? Um, a zine, right? The word zine is much more of an attitude than a specific definition of something, right? I might call it, you might call it a photo book. I'll call it a zine. Really, it's this self-driven idea that I'm going to go and create something. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be professional. So here's the first zine that I created. There's a woman named Susan Helmert who's on Substack. She's an incredible artist. And she put up a post one day all about putting your stuff on paper, right? This idea that our digital photographs got to get out of our digital medium. And she, and I went out, I bought a notebook from a dollar store, printed some photos in color off my little home color laser printer, not very high resolution, cut them out and pasted them in. I think if you tape them in, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if I have them anymore, but there's a one of my Substacks has it. This was my second one. My brother, both my brothers came for Thanksgiving. It had been a long time since then, and I made these prints and I binder clipped it together and I sent it to them. Maybe it's a zine, maybe it's a photo book. We don't need to have hardcore definitions, right?
But it's
Um,
something.
but what this told me is I can create something, and that is kind of the beauty of a zine. So I went from there to printing out. This is a project I had called buzzers. I'd had this for a long time. These were a series of buzzers photos that I collected over 20 years
Wow,
from
that's cool.
San Francisco. Um, oh, good. This one I don't have a staple in. There's one in Paris here. Um, and these, let me pull out this other staple so I can show you this. Right? This is just a double-sided piece of paper coming out of the laser printer, right? And you get a stack of these, you put them together, you staple it, and now you've got a little zine. So I created this, and I offered to send one to Susan Helmert, the uh, artist I mentioned. She sent me her address in Germany, and I put up actually a thing on Substack. Anyone who wanted it free, just send me a note. And one went to Zealand, one went to her in Germany, and I think I sent one somewhere else. And each of the people sent me photos with the zine in their hand,
Oh, that's cool.
right? And I was blown away. It's like my photography work was sitting on someone else's table.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, maybe there are people in the chat who sell prints and things like that, but that was the first time that my photography had ever really left me. Um, and it was, this great experience. So um, I went on from there to use a service called Mixam, Mixam, and they're this wonderful print service that has got this great configurator, and you put in what size you want, whether you want the glossy paper, how many copies, and they'll print you anything from one copy to tens of thousands of copies. And I think I ordered 5. They came out to be $3 a piece. I think the
Hmm.
shipping was as much as my cost for them. So, they turned out to be $10 a piece, right? So, and this is a little, the paper's a little glossier, the printing's a little bit better, and um, sent these out to a couple other people who had asked. Um, but I also saw that $15 would be the same $15 if I printed more of them.
Right.
So you could eventually get down to the $3 cost. Um, you know, so I kept going, and when we get to the car part, you'll show this old coupe that I found, but there was a sports car I found in our neighborhood, um, and I said this would be a perfect zine. This was a car that had been sitting around our neighborhood for weeks, and in our neighborhood, if a car's around for more than 72 hours, you call the cops to get it towed. This thing was
Right.
old and ratty and beaten up. And sometimes, because we're very close to San Francisco Airport, people park here, and then some people maybe dump cars occasionally. Great. I said, someone dumped this car, and the more I passed it, the more I began to say, this isn't just dump. This car, someone loving this car, even though it doesn't look it. And at that point, I had to do a project for the photo class I was taking, which was a documentary project. And I meant to go do these old fishermen who fish in a spot here. And I started to realize that this car was my project. And I shot over a couple weeks 500 photos of this car. And I turned it into this little zine, or a post in a zine. And you saw I did a little video compilation. And then I left a copy of this on the windshield with a little note to my email address. Never heard back from them, but you know what? Within about 10 or 15 minutes, it disappeared. And I didn't think it was from somebody passing by.
Right. Right.
Right. So I said, maybe I'll make a zine of this also. And I came to this other realization. Um, and this is the other reason that doing these things, you begin to learn after a while here, right? One of the things I realized is that this format is not necessarily great for the photos we take.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see if I can show you
Because we do a
here.
lot of landscape orientation, and now you got a very small picture.
Exactly. So this is that same 8.5 by 11 paper, right? But I said, if I can staple it up here, all of a sudden I can have a format that is better aligned
Mm-hmm.
to the photography we do. And then I looked on the Mixam website, and I found out for the exact same price that they will print us something stapled here, right? And I couldn't. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have one that opened this way, but that wouldn't be an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper folded in half. Um, so when I got, so what I saw on Mixam is they will do the landscape for the same price as the portrait. Um, and even though it becomes a different size piece of paper, right, they'll still do it the same. So when I ordered the Chicago one, this was sort of the fruition of all these efforts. Um, and now I got them to do a landscape booklet.
I just pulled up their website over on my iPad. So it's mixam.com, Mixam. I'm going to paste that into the chat if I can.
Yeah.
Um,
And they have a really great thing. You can order a free set of samples for them, no shipping costs, no anything else. And they send you little comic books, little papers, so you get a taste of all the different papers they offer, all the different sizes, whether you want something coated or uncoated. Um, and then on this one, so I printed 15 copies. I think my cost was um, $3 or $4 a piece.
mhm.
And I set up an Etsy store and I put it on Etsy and I started to promote it. And I used all my marketing efforts to promote it. And I sold 10 of the 15 copies.
Hey, that's awesome. That's
The
better than
first
I've
copy
ever
was to
done
my
on,
brother.
you know. Well,
Yeah,
hey, right? It doesn't matter. It's like,
right. It doesn't matter. No, the first copy was to my brother. Okay. Second copy was to an old friend I hadn't seen 20 years ago who was on my Substack who lives in Chicago. Said, "Oh, I got to
oh,
get this."
that's cool. Yeah.
And eventually, four of them went to people I got no idea who these people are or how they saw it. Another two went to Substackers I didn't know but knew they were subscribers. But when there were four people who paid, and I charged $8, so the thing cost me $3 or $4. It was $2 postage. Etsy took their cut, right? Um, I broke even, right? Um,
Hey, that's not bad for a
but it
project that
wasn't the
was
point,
in.
right?
It was never your intent to. You got to share your pictures.
Exactly. And again, a couple of the people sent me pieces and just the comments. So again, it comes down to the sharing, right? Um, let me grab something here. I've got like piles of little images I'm printing off the inkjet at school or the laser printer here, right? And that's what become these. And it's again, it's it's both the people somebody wanted to pay, but this thing to hold and to show somebody, right? Uh, yeah, it's it's such a thrill to kind of do this, and you know I watched all kind of videos on YouTube. I'm a big YouTube watcher for photography videos, and lots of people talk about how to make zines. And everybody was using InDesign, and I tried to learn. And
Oh my goodness. Oh
there's a
my
free
god.
version called Scribus you can do instead. And then when I found out that the first one I did, this the buzzers, I laid this out in Google Docs.
Hmm.
And there's pretty wide margins, but just about the only right because Google Docs had a minimum margin, and then you put in the printer. And the hardest thing about doing these, if anyone wants to do this, is laying out the pages as a booklet, right?
Right. Right.
Because this was
Booklet.
one full page, and if you see right, you've got two pages here, kind of different orientations. You got to do it, and there's a bunch of tools online that do
Yeah.
good booklets.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't looked at that in a really long time, but I know exactly what you're talking about because when it goes to the printer, they're printing pages, then that get concatenated and folded upon each other. So when you turn the page, you're not turning to the next page, you're turning the next sheet, but that might be a completely different page, especially when you get to the back half, right? So uh,
exactly.
that's
So
hard.
Mixam takes care of that for you. If you want a 24-page um, book, you send them 24 separate pages, and they do that for you, right? And that's part of why I started. I'm going to be having a class I call Zine School, right? You go to zineschool.com to see details about that, and we will talk in there about how you learn pagination. The other thing about zines, and my kids even think they even did this in seventh grade. They had a zine class for a semester. That was their elective. Um, if you go look up zines online, you will find something called the one-page folded zine.
Hmm.
Um, and you lay it out like this, and you fold it and you tear this little center section,
Okay,
right?
so it
And you
kind of
fold it
does
like
the.
this and watch. Now, I made this a landscape version, right? But normally people do these in portraits, and you can find templates for this online, and you end up with this little um, booklet like this. So this is something you do at home. The hardest thing, though, because a lot of people will draw little comics for these, and you'll find templates that tell you which spot will become which page and how to
Mhm.
lay them out. The hardest thing was kind of turning the things the right way. And then it's a lot of this is experimentation. So when you're doing a booklet, you need to have exactly 4 pages or 8 pages or 12 pages, right? Because every piece of paper is 4 pages.
Mhm.
So if you end up with a 25-page booklet, um, you then end up with 3 empty pages at the end of
Right.
the book.
Right. You have
So there was a
eh,
lot of trial and error here. It was a lot of
th-
learning.
this page intentionally left blank.
Yes. But the
That kind
great
of.
thing is, look, if you've got access to a color printer or a black and white printer, you can print 2 pages, have a little 8-page book, right? And um, all like cheap materials. I started to find some. I'm producing amazing stuff on my laser printers. The other thing, right? We always think about inkjet printers as the place to go for photos, but
Mm.
I had a home laser printer from all the work, and it's just a lot cheaper to do the pages when you buy third-party stuff. I found that there is glossy laser paper. I have
Mhm.
this one. I've got this Staples one. And who knew there's settings in your printer to tell it that you have glossy paper or thicker
Mhm.
paper.
Mhm. Absolutely. You just have to
And
go and look for them.
right, once you start using those, the printer slows down and did this incredible output. So I started to do that. And really I have two tools I use for making my own stuff at home, right? Um, I think this one we got at the flea market for $10, but I think it's, $20 at Michael's. This is my paper cutter. And for $30, this is my big splurge. This is called a saddle stitch stapler. Right?
Oh, yes. So you can put it in. Uh-huh.
Yeah. It
Uh-huh.
won't work for that version, but here. And that's how I made these home ones. But the first ones I actually just sent out. I think the first one I sent to Germany wasn't even stapled. This lets you, there's also something called a long reach stapler. Right. So this was like $30.
So-
The other thing I want is a really good paper cutter, the big old guillotine paper cutters, with the,
Oh, yeah. The kind
and
that
you know
they
what?
had lying around in elementary school. It was like.
Right. When I got married and my wife made me get rid of stuff, right? I got rid of that. But I went to Craigslist, $10. There's hundreds of them, right? Um, oh, I was looking for this underneath all the stuff on my desk before. This was a huge inspiration. This is a guy named Austin Kleon, and he wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist that became very popular. And this was his second book called Show Your Work. And he in here talks about the importance of sharing your work. And the entire book is here, right? At first, I got this from the library as an ebook. Um, so it says, um,
I
you don't
think
have
he's
to
on
be a
Substack
genius.
too, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's got a really
Okay.
good subject.
Okay. I thought so.
Think process, not product. Share something small every day. Open your cabinet. Tell good stories. Teach what you know. Um, so so this is a really good book that a lot of it talks about why sharing improves your own work. So this is something I highly recommend. And as I get zine school off the ground, right, after I
Mhm.
get my initial tuitions of $30 and finally go to, I think there's someone who charges $800 for zine school, right? And it raised up to a decent enough price. I'll send these out to all the registrants.
So I was just looking. While you were showing and telling, I was quickly went over to the mixam.com. I don't know how you pronounce that. And went to the zine, and it has, you can choose a bunch of options. And so you could make, I think it has, so like 10 copies is $10.50 in color. And then you
Yeah,
can choose different options. And if you wanted to do 50 of them, it's only $37.50. That's not too bad for 50 copies. And with all things printing, there's a certain minimum run. That's generally the hardest part with printers is that there's typically a setup cost up front that kind of gets amortized over the cost of your entire production run. And so
Yep.
when you want to do things that are one off, it gets very expensive. And the only other place that I'd seen, and I'm honestly, I never done one of these, but once upon a time, people would do photo books, blurb. That's the big one that everybody knows, right? And there is a module in Lightroom to go directly to blurb, actually, and but
Yep.
that's like high quality. You're talking, to do a modest photo book, and this would be a coffee table book kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, hardcover, soft, whatever.
And
They're expensive. They're like $15 to $20, $30 a copy.
right.
Eh,
My wife does those, right? We got back from our first trip to Paris with the kids when they were old enough to go, and she made this incredible photo book of Paris. And every few years, we'd pull it off the shelf and look at it, right?
It's a
And
good thing to have. I mean, no
right.
no doubt.
And these were the very first time I printed my digital photos. These were called chapbooks. And these were designed back in the days that Instagram was all square photos and was all about photography. It linked into your Instagram, and every time you had enough photos for a chat book, you could order a chat book,
Hey,
right?
Josh, we just had a question in the chat. What was the title of the book that you were from
F-
us?
it is called Show Your Work, and it's by Austin Kleon.
I'm going to put it in the chat
And what
because
does
we
it
have
say here? It
some.
says it's $15. Usually you find, I think I got this $6 on Amazon, but
Okay, there we
every
go.
library has it. I'm a huge public library user, and people don't know you can borrow ebooks from the library.
Hmm.
So when
True.
I heard about this, I got it from the library not because it was cheap, right? But I wanted to read it that day. And that
Right.
afternoon, I had it on my iPad and was reading it. I read it, and then I borrowed it from the library 3 times before I finally ordered my own copy.
There you go. That's
But
that's
come back to
cool.
Mixum because Mixum also does different sizes. And
Right. The one I looked up was just a small, eight and a
look up
half
the
by five.
A6 booklet while I'm
Okay,
talking here.
A6 booklet. A6. So A6 is 4.1 by 5.8 inches because we don't
Yeah.
because it's probably makes more sense in centimeters. Um,
Well, I
and
learned a lot about the A size. I'll explain to you later.
well,
But
yeah, they're an interesting thing. Yeah, you can
but
fold
but
them.
basically, you can get the A6 books at quantity for about a buck something, a buck 20 or so.
Yeah, it looks like 50 of those. It comes up as $53 and 50
Right.
cents. So
And
about
one
a
of the
buck a
things I
piece.
find, right, because I'm a walk around photographer, I walk my neighborhood, I'm stopping, I'm taking pictures of people's driveways, their cars, and sometimes people come out and sort of look at you funny and go, "Oh, you're a photographer." And what they mean is, "What the heck are you doing here photographing my house?"
Yeah, exactly.
So not only am I working on a new business card, but I'm working on a little walk around photo booklet. It's going to be about this size. Here, this would have been the Chicago booklet in that size, and it's going to have that's what this one originally was. Here, I'll show you this. So I'll have a little booklet I can give to people I meet on the street that says, "Here's who I am. There's my business
Mm.
card. Um, that I here are the photo lessons I give. This will say, here's my website, my gallery, and this will for $1. This will be a little giveaway to someone who says, "Hey,
It's almost like a little mini portfolio.
yes,"
That's cool.
and um, so that's my next zine, right? But come back to these chapbooks, right? These were photo books. They're almost a zine, right? But they're a little hardbound, and these were $12 a piece or something.
Mhm.
Right? You could send, and there are people who definitely make hardbound zines, right?
Oh, that's cool. Right.
It's all in the attitude, right? Where does
Right.
the zine stop and the book start? And there are people who sell their zines for $30 or $50. Um, I'll show you one more set that I've really liked. There's a guy, what is the name of his? Nick Carr. He's a location scout. First, he was in New York City and then LA. Location scouts go and find out where is a film going to shoot.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if they need a 1920s bank, he's got a whole catalog of 1920 banks. But they don't like just go to the director and say use that. They're the person also responsible for finding out who is the owner who can give permission, what does he
Hmm.
want to use the site? When would be good to use the site? Where do we find the parking? Where are we going to find? Where
Right.
can the caterers set up that to rent an extra building?
The
So
fixers is what they are. They got to get
he
everything
has
laid
these
out.
incredible, yes, he has the incredible stories of being a location scout in New York City.
I can only imagine.
And he had a blog for a long time, and then he created these little zines, right? That has both his photography, and he's much more into writing the stories of them. So these were the first zines I ever bought from anyone. These were $12 that he's were selling them on Etsy. So that's where I kind of you know got that idea. So it comes back to where we began, right? People should do stuff with their photography. Um,
Yes, right. And it's we get into this space where we get good gear and we go out and we do things and we learn all these techniques, right? And then you think you're gonna sell your pictures. I quickly learned I wasn't gonna sell my pictures. Not, and it has nothing to do with the quality of your pictures. Yeah, it's like photo contests, right? There are pictures that are awesome, and you should put them on your wall or print them and share them because they're excellent. And people will come up and say, "Wow, did you take that picture? That's really good." But if the conversation says, "Do you sell your pictures?" Then the next thing is, well, okay. And then the conversation kind of went like this. This is when I had a cubicle job. Okay. So the office space, and I do have a stapler too, Josh. It's a red swing line because it, that's the important stapler. Anyway,
don't let anyone take it from you.
no one gets it. But the conversation, well, do you sell your pictures? Why, well, what, or it'd be like, and as soon as you mentioned that it was going to be more than $10, oh gosh, no, well, I don't want to buy it myself. You see. Or do you have anything smaller? Or how about if I just pay you for the ink? This is what the typical conversation of a photo enthusiast who has a day job goes. The people love your work. They're not willing to pay you for it. And I put some of my photos once on consignment in a frame shop here in town, thinking, oh, well, they're pictures of Colorado Springs. Maybe people would like them. I got a call from the frame shop. We got an order for your photo. You made a sale. You need to come in here. You need to print this out. Here's the specs, and you need to sign it, um, and then we'll frame it and send it to them. Wow, this is amazing. I got my first sale, right? It was my grandmother, my sweet grandmother, who got me into it. And that's to this day the only photo print that I've actually sold for any. So the thing about the zine that I'm really liking, from your sharing this, is that it's sort of minimalist.
Hmm.
It's certainly low cost, um, and it can be used for a lot of things beyond just it. Not everything has to be a coffee table book,
Right.
right? Not everything has to be a coffee table book, and it's a great way of doing something that gets you beyond the digital. And if there's one thing I think all of us struggle with as digital shooters, and in a internet universe, is like it's very easy to share your photos online, but there's something about a tangible print that feels different.
Right.
Wouldn't you say? I mean, that's kind
Oh,
of how I feel about.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I started to do is so I've as I learned how to do great photo prints on the laser printer, I print them out four up, right? So 4 to 8.5 by 11 sheet, cut them up, and I lay them out on our dining room table. And all of a sudden, you can begin to cull them or sort them or reduce them in a different way. And you put them next to each other. And even then, when you would go to do the zine, you start to sequence them. Right?
Mhm.
Here's what I would challenge everyone who's on the stream right now to create a zine the next few weeks. And here's what I tell you to do: if you don't have a printer at home, go to Walgreens and bring your memory card or whatever it takes in there, and go make 8 prints.
Mhm.
um
You can even upload them.
maybe 10, right? They're going to be they don't do c what are called c prints, the old using chemicals, right? They do really bad dye subprints nowadays. That doesn't matter, right?
They're not too bad for
You're
for
right.
for a 4 by 6 type of printing. They're actually fine.
And then go get 3 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper and fold them in half. Go get a glue stick or some tape, and tape those prints down. And actually, what you should do is get 2 copies of every print and make 2 copies of the zine,
There you go.
and keep one for yourself and send one to someone else. Put up a note on Instagram, I got a free thing, or give it to a friend or someone else. And just the feeling of having a little thing you made. And in fact, when you give it to someone, ask them to give you a piece of artwork. Doesn't
Preferably
matter if
really
they're
expensive.
yes, it's a piece of artwork they made, right? Maybe it's a cake. Maybe they like to sketch. Right? I'm amazed by the number of people I find who sketch, who look, the other thing I do photography for is to help me keep the phone in the pocket. Doesn't work a lot. I was on the
Mm,
phone so much walking around Chicago, but every time I'm taking a picture, right? So I find people who have a notebook on the, on the BART, and they sketch instead of looking at their phone, right? But trade your artwork to someone else for a piece of their artwork.
that's a great idea. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left before the top of the hour, so I want to switch gears a little bit. This was awesome. Thank you so much. But there is something that you want to mention, and yes, I apologize. Those of you in the chat, when this thing got reset up, I wasn't able to resend the invite to Josh, so I put Josh's Substack URL in the chat. You can just copy and paste it. Go follow Josh, give him some likes, show him the love today. But we want to talk about you. You have an upcoming sort of Substack photo theme coming up soon, right?
Yeah. So the other, the other thing that I have really come to embrace with photography is that one of the best ways to learn photography is to have a photography community. And this is why I took 2 years ago an introduction to digital photography school, even though I've been doing digital photography at that point for 25 years and photography for 50, and found such a great community in there and a great teacher and a mentor. And then on Substack, right? I tried Instagram for a long time. It's nice. And really, I originally did Instagram for myself to have a gallery of my photos. But when I finally started to get on Instagram, I found an ability to slow down and look at other people's photos more than the split second I looked on Instagram. And I found that people were looking at my photos a little bit more, giving me more input, also let me group them into ideas. And um, one of the things that happened recently is I posted some car photography. Right? I'll take an aside to tell you
Which
my
is
history
different
with
from
car photography.
cartography. Let's just be clear.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, car photography, not cartography, which is another thing I'm passionate about and love. But I had started to try car photography a couple years ago, and there was, these cars and coffees shows, and there were some, local groups that had classic cars, and I went and started to try to photograph these classic cars, and I got bupkis.
Hmm.
These were boring photos. They were ugly, and I started to read up about photography. And the next time I went, I began to photograph car dashboards. They were fascinating. And I said, God, I wonder what's out there. And I found two incredible coffee books, and they had done car dashboards to death. And they had incredible, interesting histories of car dashboards. Um, so I took some, and they were okay. Um, and I just kept trying to take car photography and see. And it wasn't until I really began to incorporate into my walk around photography. I don't know if you have any of those cars with personality. And I started to notice old cars in my neighborhood that weren't super fixed up, nor were they degenerating, and they were cars that had been loved, and I that time called them cars with personality, and now call them cars with patina.
There you go. And we've got some of your photos.
Yeah,
You want to
why
share?
don't you pull those up?
Well, I'm going to pull them up on my screen.
Okay.
I'll share that with everyone, and we we'll get this in there, and hopefully that pops up. And I'm going to just go ahead and get us the view here. And okay, there we go. So these are the
That's probably
cars
the
in
least.
sort of in
Yeah,
your
let's go to the
neighborhood, right?
next one.
Okay.
And you just flip through these pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
No, no.
You can
If
always
you've
go
got
back
something
to the site and
you
see
want
them.
to talk about, absolutely.
Um, so let's stop. This was that coupe that I was talking about
Uh huh.
earlier.
This is the one that you left the zine on.
Yes, and it's now been repainted and it's white and so on. But that is a car that you might just walk by, you might not appreciate, you might not notice, but then you start to look at it and you go, this thing's got some personality. This has had a life. But you know what? It's still in pretty good condition. The tires are in good shape.
Hmm.
All the pieces are there. It had a current license plate. Um, so I began to really embrace car photography, not as going to car shows, but as finding those cars around in my neighborhood that popped out or stood out.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. Looks like an old taxi at one
Yeah.
point in its life.
In front of like the perfect building for it, right?
Right.
It just feels right.
An 80s vintage Volvo for sure.
Right. But that's been well maintained and well kept. And um, what else we got there?
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, this little chop
This thing
top.
has been gone through some manifestation of different someone's vision with all those pipes on it. It's like
Right.
the ultimate roll cage right there. Oh, there
So
you
it
go.
was, and this one was there for months. It's similar to that one, by my house. This one's about a mile away from my house on a route I used to walk a lot. Um, you can
And you
see
know
it.
what I like about this, Josh? This is just it looks like the pink flowers are the exhaust trailing out of this
Mhm.
car.
And that apartment, right? The era of the apartment sort of fits it also, and the maintenance of the
Hmm.
apartment. There's a lot of so these all spoke to me, right? So bottom line is, I began to get into car photography, um, and a couple weeks ago, the series I put up was called Covered Cars because I went back through. Um, I don't know if you have that one also.
Um, no, I don't think I have that one. But
Okay,
why?
people can see it on my Substack.
Yeah, why don't we just so I put the link to Josh's
Right.
Substack in the chat.
So
Um,
I put up a series of covered cars, and someone wrote to me and said, I just published the same. A couple weeks ago, I did a similar series.
I saw some of your posts come through my feed with the car. These are cars that have got covers on them, so they
Yeah.
are covered
So
cars.
right. So you know, there's a VW a van that lives in my neighborhood, and actually, it's another one that I did a little instant zine for. Oh, here. This was Friday Night Find. I was walking around on a Friday night. Um, and there's one, a little VW microbus, no
Hmm.
shovels, rakes, and implements of destruction, for those who get the
I'm
reference.
sure there's a couple of people in this very chat who know that
If you get
exact
the
reference.
reference, let us know.
Usually only
Um,
around Thanksgiving time.
and rather than take lots of different cars, this one, I took about, I don't know, 50, 60 cars in 50, 60 pictures of this, over about a 30-minute period.
Very cool.
Went home, picked the ones I like, threw together this zine, and went back and left it on their windshield again with a little
Nice.
note, and of course didn't hear anything back. But um, one of the covered cars is this with a cover on it. It's very obvious that it's a VW van. And then there were some others with a motorcycle with the cover shouldn't even be on anymore. It's so torn, and some with the cover blown off. But really, the interesting piece was that this other person wrote back in and said, what? I published the same series a couple weeks ago. And then he wrote a whole incredible essay
Same
about
car?
no,
Okay.
a
Just
series of covered cars,
same
right?
same idea. Okay, gotcha. I was like, wow, same car.
And he had written this very thoughtful essay about what does this mean. If anyone out there is familiar with Robert Frank, who did the book called The Americans, which
Mm,
was really the first road photography travel book, and changed people's way of thinking about photography, has moved them towards thinking about as art. And this is in this early 60s. He has a picture in there of a covered car,
nice.
and it dawned on me. This thing went off in my head. I said, you know what? There really is this incredible community on Substack.
Hmm.
And I said, if I'm doing covered cars, and here's covered cars, right? And people started writing about their car photography. I said, we should harness the community, do something together. And I said, why don't we have a car week
There you go.
where um, we get all these Substackers to post their take on car photography, right? Because at first, when you hear car photography, you may think of what I started with, those glamour shots of the classic Bugatti or someone's
Mm,
Porsche, or what a really good friend, Ethan Sager, takes, which is supercars that he,
Mm,
comes across and finds, right? But everybody's take on car photography is different. You're going to have some of that. Then you're going to have some of the my cars with personality. There's other people who are going to love rust or mirrors or
mhm.
broken down cars or something. So I said, let's find a week, and I picked a week a month from now. I think it's Friday, March 6th. And I said, let's get as many photographers on Substack as we can to put up posts that week of car photography. And then I'm going to put up a post where anyone who sends me the link to their car photography post, I will put up. So we can kind of, almost like a museum exhibit.
So is it
See
the week of
everyone's
March, what
March
was
6th
that?
should be a Friday, right?
March 6th is the Friday, so is that when it
Yeah.
starts?
So
Okay,
yeah, so Friday at 10 a.m. I'm going to put out this post with all the posts I know about, and then I'll update it throughout the day. And then um, everyone that week, who wants to post cars, and if anyone here is really a Substack reader, it's a great opportunity. You got a couple pictures of a car,
there you
post
go.
it up, and let's get it out there.
Absolutely.
And the other interesting thing is, I haven't seen this complaint as much before, but if you go to create a Substack, it asks you what category you are. Are you
Mhm.
a fiction writer? Are you in news? Are you a, graphic designer? And for a long time, people have complained there isn't a photography category.
Well, 'cause there isn't one.
Right? And maybe if we can get enough mass, of people, and so far I've been shocked. I got about 22 people so far who said they're going to do posts.
That's awesome.
And there's a blogger I love, there's a Substacker I love who called Ordinary Japan, who does these photos. He posts these photos he took a decade ago in Japan of sometimes it's storefronts, sometimes it's signs. He's really got this great artistic eye. I wrote to him and I say, hey, we're doing this. I got to imagine in the library of photos you have, you've got to have cars. Can you put together car photos? He said, I'd love to.
That's
Um,
fantastic. Well, I mean, it's gonna be fun, and, to your point, just I would say I'd leave it with this, because we're over our time for the hour. But and thanks again for
wow.
everyone who has joined today. And I will get better for next time with the invite stuff. So I did put Josh's Substack link, and so if they want to join Car Week, all they have to do is post a picture or two of some cars and just tag you in it.
Yeah. So look, so the easiest way to find my stuff, and I got all kind of URLs, but just go to randomcapture.com.
Okay,
That'll get you right to my Substack. And it has right now on the top of the Substack is a little link that says Car Week instructions.
perfect.
And if you
There you
click
go.
on that, it tells you just what to do. Wow, I didn't even realize we're an hour in. So
Yeah, the
thank
time
you.
time flies when you're having fun. But here's the cool thing about your top, and I want to loop it back to our discussion about the urban landscape Chicago. Car, you go into it with a certain um, um, idea in mind, the classic, oh, this, it's going to be classic cars. And guess what? A car show is like one of the hardest places to photograph cars because they're all really close together. You don't get that pretty shot. So you've got to find other ways to approach the subject. And what I saw you do was, well, I'm just going to find cars on the street. That's one. Or you can do stuff that I have done in the past, which is I'm going to just focus on details, hood ornaments, or tires, or whatever, or
Dashboards.
your grills or front ends or whatever, front ends, back ends, it's all good, right? Um, so just the idea that you can break the stereotype with whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be the pristine GTO and uh, what's the show they have up there in the Concours d'Elegance, the
Yeah. So Chasing Classic Cars is the one I love.
that they do up in
Yeah. Concord in
Pebble
Monterey.
Beach. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pebble Beach in that area. So anyway, Josh, it has been super awesome.
I so enjoyed this.
To use a silly term, but it's been great having you here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of it. I appreciate everyone who joined us live. This will go out on replay. And Josh, I will send you the link to the replay so that you can share it appropriately. Again, I will. Learning by doing. It's like, damn it, Jim, I'm a photographer, not a video producer. But we'll get it all good. So thanks again Josh. And until next time, this has been Let's Click Photography Talk with Jason Odell. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.